Vital signs. I would like to know what rings into your mind when you hear the term vital signs. So it is pretty clear, just as the name suggests. So something vital is something very key, something very important, something very basic that has to be done every time you are in a given situation. So it is vital for you to sleep each day, for you to have adequate rest so that the following day you proceed with your normal activities. It is vital for you to feed or to eat so that your body gets enough energy, gets enough glucose, proteins, and the vitamins that are needed for the proper functioning of the body. So whenever we talk about vital signs in a clinical setup, it's not any different. These are signs, or we can basically say that they are evidence of physical or evidence of normal functioning of the body. So basically, you can also just define them as evidence that your body is fine, okay? There are things which needs to exist in you so that we can differentiate you from somebody who is lying down somewhere who is lifeless. So I can also say that is something, there are signs or there are features that distinguish lifelessness from life. So these are the vital signs. So basically, they are the major things that we normally look for every time you come into a hospital. It does not matter whatever is being done to you, it is paramount that they have to be checked. Why should we check them? Because they are evidence that your body is functioning as it should. So regardless of whatever it is that you have come for in the hospital, be it any self-request testing that you want to be done on yourself, be it any question that you have, by the virtue that you come into a medical facility or a hospital, it is ideal that these vital signs be checked. Now, when I talk about vital sign, what are some of the examples of these vital signs that we talk about? So the human body has got a variety of vital signs. The first one and the key one that we normally check is what we call blood pressure. So blood pressure is a vital sign because it shows us how your heart pumps blood from the heart to all parts of the body, be it to the lungs, to the other organs in the body, and even to the peripheries or far away. So we normally check blood pressure. First things first, we need to know how your blood pressure is. And why are we checking blood pressure? Because it helps us elicit other conditions that could not be elicited without checking the blood pressure. Remember, something like hypertension is what we normally target anytime, many of the times when we take the blood pressure. And you see hypertension mostly, if not always, you don't have any symptoms of hypertension, not unless you get checked and the doctor says, oh no, this blood pressure is elevated. Therefore, we need to have it checked, or we need to have it monitored or followed up. So blood pressure forms the backbone of the vital signs. So it is one of the things that we start with anytime you arrive at the hospital. So when you talk about blood pressure, we need to know what is normal, what is not. So because it is blood pressure, it is something that runs in a roller coaster. It is something that runs in a roller coaster. There is no constant for it that blood pressure is 10. If it is not 10, that is not normal. No, we have a range for the blood pressure. So whenever blood pressure is taken on you, when you look at the blood pressure machine, there are two readings, but it varies from one blood pressure machine to the other. But we normally focus on three things. We focus on the systolic blood pressure, which is normally the topmost reading that normally appears. Now, this one shows the pressure that the blood flows through the arteries when the heart contracts. That is the pressure that is exerted whenever the heart contracts to pump blood to all parts of the body. Now, the downer blood pressure that is normally recorded is what we call the diastolic blood pressure. Now, diastolic blood pressure is the pressure that we find when we can tentatively say that the heart is relaxing. So the contraction of the heart produces a pressure. We call it systolic, when blood is pumped to all parts of the body, and the diastolic, when the heart relaxes and blood from the atrium flows into the ventricle upon the relaxation of the ventricle. So because of this, we normally have a range for them. So the systolic blood pressure, the range is from 90 millimeters of mercury to 120 millimeters of mercury. The diastolic blood pressure, which I've explained, the reading is normally from 60 millimeters of mercury to 80 millimeters of mercury. Now that is the blood pressure range. So we can comfortably say that the range that we mostly work with is from 90/60 millimeters of mercury to 120/80 millimeters of mercury. That is the range that we mostly work with. After blood pressure, there's another vital sign that is called the temperature. I know majority of us right now are familiar with blood temperature, or rather the body temperature, because of the COVID-19 seasons. Whenever you went, a watchman could point to your forehead with something that looks like a gun. Other people were horrified about the same, but it was just to take the body's temperature. Now, why is the body's temperature key, or why are we calling it vital? It can point us towards a direction whether there is an infection in the body or there's any other issue within the body that has the potential of interfering with the normal temperature, or rather thermoregulation. Now, owing to this, temperature is also subjective, and therefore there is a range that we normally work with. There is no constant because people are different, how their body operates is different, so we normally also have a range. That is from 97 Fahrenheit or 36.7 degrees Celsius to 99 Fahrenheit, or rather 37.2 degrees centigrades or Celsius. So that is the range of the temperature. The next thing is respiratory rate. Respiratory rate is the number of times you breathe in and out within a minute. When you inhale and exhale, that is one respiratory cycle. So respiratory rate is the amount of inhalation and exhalation cycles that you will go through in 1 minute. So this one is very important to us because one, it will show us whether you have respiratory tract issues that are affecting how you breathe, issues that are affecting how you use your muscles to breathe. Through this, we can see whether you have any difficulty in breathing. We can see whether you are breathing more than usual that we expect. So it is very important that we look at the respiratory rate. So many of the times when most of healthcare practitioners may overlook this, but it is one of the vital signs that we have to take into account. So when we take this, we won't tell you, we'll just be talking to you in a relaxed manner and we'll be counting the cycles. When you breathe in and out, we count 1. Breathe in and out, we count 2. So in a way that you are settled and you are not in any form of shape and comfortable. So that is why this respiratory rate is taken when the patient is as comfortable as possible and in a natural state. Because when you take respiratory rate of somebody who was running or who was engaged in exercise, it will be much higher because the body requires more oxygen in order to supply to the tissues. So we normally look at the best time when the patient is relaxed and well seated. So just as other aspect of the vital signs, it also has a range, and this one is interesting. The range varies based on age groups. When we look at toddlers, the respiratory rate could go from 24 breaths per minute to 40. And I think your guess could be as good as mine. They breathe faster within a minute. Reason being, at this age, their metabolic activities or their metabolic rates are quite high. The cells are dividing profusely. There are a lot that is happening within their bodies. They are trying to grow and develop. Growth and development is taking place. Therefore, more oxygen is needed in order to break down some of the nutrients that they need or to oxidize other things that they need. It is also needed for brain development. So that is why they tend to have this faster respiratory rate. It is also a different case when we go to preschool age, that is around 1 to 3 years. The respiratory rate could range from 22 to 34. That is also another range that you could find in that age. And now when you come to adolescent and adults, we have a range from 12 to 16 breaths per minute. So any deviation from this, if the patient is not engaged in any tedious activity or major exercise, could indicate a problem within the respiratory tract or within the heart or the cardiovascular system. So we need to investigate. That is why we call that as part of the vital sign. The other thing that we normally look for in the vital sign is the blood oxygen concentration, or rather what we call SpO2. Now, the hemoglobin within the human body performs an array of functions, and one of the major functions is to transport oxygen. So there is a way how we normally measure this oxygen through what we call a pulse oximeter. So anytime you visit a hospital, the pulse oximeter should be put in your finger. Most preferably, personally, I normally go for the middle finger. And whenever we place the pulse oximeter there and we allow it to read for some time, because this pulse oximeter is a machine that has been manufactured and fitted with a technology that has got infrared rays and the red rays. So these rays have the capability to discern or differentiate between hemoglobin that contain oxygen from the hemoglobin that does not have oxygen. So they cherry pick the hemoglobin that have got oxygen, and through that there is a calculation that the machine does in order to calculate averagely the concentration of oxygen within your body. So whenever this is done, we normally have a range for the same. But an oxygen concentration rate or SpO2 rate of 97 and above is normally acceptable. Now when we have other figures like 80% and below, now we know that there's a problem with saturation of oxygen within your system. The problem could be originating from the heart, the problem could be originating from the lungs, where blood gets oxygenated. The problem could also be originating from the heart, such that the heart is not able to pump oxygenated blood well to other parts of the body. So that is why we normally take it to distinguish whether there is a problem in any of those systems that I have mentioned. The other vital sign is respiratory rate, is pulse rate, sorry, pulse rate. Pulse rate is the number of times in which your heart beats within a minute. So this one also varies from a child who is inside the womb to an adult. So there's that variation which I will attach here for your reference. But what is clear is that in children, the respiratory rate tends to be higher as opposed to the pulse rate tends to be higher as opposed to in adults. Reason well known, because in children the metabolic rate is high and every other thing, that the nutrients that need to be supplied to various body organs within children are required at a very huge frequency, and because they're still developing, now you'll find that the pulse rate is high. Now, to adults, pulse rate of 60 to 100 is acceptable. But whenever we have a higher pulse rate, could indicate a number of conditions, a wide variety of conditions that we will talk about one after the other. But I want you to know that in each and every condition, there's a way how the heart behaves. Because I've told you pulse rate is the number of times the heart pumps blood within a minute, the heartbeats that you normally get. Now this pulse rate, we can also define it as regular or irregular. The regular one is when now the heart beats in a way that produce a symphony, or rather in a way that is somehow musical, that has got a formula. But in an irregular one, there is no particular pattern that the heart follows to beat. Now in all these conditions, or in all these cases, it points to a specific condition within the body, which we will talk about. So ladies and gentlemen, all those things that I've talked about, the vital signs, they are very key. They are very key, and they ought to be taken each and every time you step foot into the hospital. Because one way or another, they could be related to the symptoms that have brought you to the hospital. And in most of the cases, some of them may be overlooked. That is why you are seeing somebody has been hypertensive for quite some time and it has not been noticed until the day they develop a stroke or a cerebrovascular accident. So it is normally important that they get checked. So even if you are not sick, you are at home, you're feeling well, it is just important that you walk into a health facility, you just say, check for me my vital signs. They will be able to do that. They will give you the reading so that you see how the functioning of your body is, whether the vitality of your body well-being is still okay. So make a point to see that all these vital signs are taken in you each and every time you get a chance to be checked. And also let me make it clear, it is also your right to be explained to whenever a doctor or a clinician or any healthcare practitioner takes these vital signs from you, because they are vital for your well-being, just as the names suggest. Until next time, this is Kawegi Dog.